round sock toe comes in two forms, a short version and a long version. In this week's Technique Tuesday video, I'll demonstrate how to knit both versions, including how to decide which version is right for your foot and how to customize the fit if neither version is quite right. If you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, you can tap or mouse over the video playback area of the screen to reveal the chapter titles and starting points of each section. I have two swatches here. One of them represents a short round toe and the other represents a long round toe. These two toe types are worked exactly the same in terms of how you get them started and how you work each increase round. The difference is in the number of plain rounds that are worked between each increase round. There are two different formulas for how these are worked. So I'm going to go through how the short round toe is worked first, and that will show you all of the techniques that are used in working the increase rounds, how to read your knitting, what those increases look like in the finished fabric, etc. And then I will explain the formula for the long round toe and show some comparisons, and then we will go through some examples of why you might want a short round toe for one foot, but a long round toe for a different foot. Regardless of what your target stitch count is for the foot of your sock, you're going to start with 8 stitches. And we're going to be increasing by 8 stitches each time. So if your target stitch count isn't a multiple of 8, that's fine. We can take care of that in the very last increase round. I am going to use Judy's Magic Cast On, and I'm going to cast on 8 stitches altogether, so 4 stitches on each needle. So I have 4 stitches on each needle. I want to make sure I don't lose that tail as I turn. Because I'm using Judy's Magic Cast On, I am going to only work a half a round, and then I'm going to go into the first increase round. Judy's Magic Cast On, just because of the way it's structured, allows me to work just a half a round. So 4 of the stitches, and then I actually have a row of stitches between the 2 needles. For a Turkish cast on or figure 8, you'd have to work an entire round before you'd see 1 row of stitches between the 2 needles. If you don't understand this and you are always used to working a full round when you use Judy's Magic Cast On, feel free to do that. Every increase round, we're going to increase by 8 stitches. So for this first round, we're going to do this by doing a yarn over and a knit 1 and repeat that for the entire round so that we end up with 16 stitches at the end. This means you need to start with a yarn over on this needle. So if you are a continental knitter, that's very easy. You just bring your needle underneath and you've got your yarn over, and then you can work your knit stitch like that. And it works just, and then you have your 2 stitches. If you're an English knitter and you find it really awkward to do a yarn over at the start, I will show you how easy it is. You have your yarn tension, you just bring your needle underneath that yarn, and so that it's now lying on the needle. That's your yarn over. That's all there is to it, is just bring that needle underneath that yarn so that it's lying across. So from here on in, you're just going to, again, alternate a yarn over with a knit stitch for the entire round. When you get to where that short tail is hanging, you're going to get a loose stitch. Just tighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, all the way across. So now we should have 8 stitches on each needle. We're now going to work 2 plain rounds. For the short round toe, this is going to always be true. We'll work an increase round and then 2 plain rounds, an increase round, 2 plain rounds. That is how the short round toe is worked. When you work the first of the 2 plain rounds, you are going to be working those yarn overs through the back so that they twist. So this creates the same result as a make one increase, but without the tension issues that you can get from a make one that you do by lifting the running thread. So every time you have a yarn over, you're going to work it through the back. And then when you have a regular knit stitch, you'll just work it normally. I'm going to work the second half the same way. Yarn overs through the back, regular knit stitches through the front. And now we're back at the beginning of the round again. I like to put a marker along that edge right there just to show me which half of the round is the beginning of the round, because sometimes you can lose track, especially as the toe gets longer. So let's take a close-up at what this looks like. So that first plain round is when the yarn over came off the needle and it twisted. So now we're ready to do a second plain round. So anytime you see that twisted loop right below the needle, you know that you still need to do a second plain round. So now we can check what we did. When we did our increase round, the yarn over was on the needle. When we did the first plain round, it came off the needle and formed this twisted stitch. And then we did our second plain round and we have a regular stitch under the needle. So that's how you can tell if you've got your two plain rounds. You'll see the twisted stitch and then a regular stitch right above it. Now we're going to do our second increase round. And again, we're going to start with a yarn over. And this time we're going to knit 2 plain stitches. And then we do a yarn over and 2 plain stitches, a yarn over, 2 knit stitches, yarn over, 2 knit stitches. Again, this is our second increase round, so we're doing a knit 2 after every yarn over. Got my yarn over, knit 2, yarn over, knit 2, yarn over, knit 2, yarn over, knit 2. So now we do our first plain round, and we're going to always work the yarn overs through the back and the regular knit stitches as you would any knit stitch. So we finished that round and we can double check. Do we need to do another plain round? Yes, there is a twisted stitch right below the needle, so that means we need to do another plain round. So let's say you put your knitting down and you come back to it and you can't remember where you were. You can check to see if it's time for an increase round or not by seeing that, oh, I've got my twist and my plain stitch above it. That means it's time for an increase round. How do I know how many knit stitches I'm supposed to work after my yarn over? Well, let's take a look. We're going to start again with our yarn over, and then we're going to knit across until we come to the most recent column of stitches. So this is the last time that we created a yarn over was right here. So those are always going to appear to the left of a new yarn over. So what we can see is I did a yarn over and 3 knit stitches, and then I came to this column right here, which is the last one that was created. So I'm going to do a yarn over, and then I'm going to knit 3 stitches. And you can see again, oh, it's time for a yarn over. Second half of the round, it's the same thing. I knit until I get to the most recently created column and I do my yarn over right before it. And now once again, it's time to work 2 plain rounds. So we're going to keep doing this until we have achieved the total stitch count that we need. So what you can see in what I have so far is the 3 different increase rounds I've done so far. And while you can see where the increases are, because it's a twisted loop versus a standard V of a stitch, it sits between the existing stitches really nicely. It's not pulling slack out of the adjoining stitches, which is why I really like it for this sort of application. For the short round toe, you're going to continue doing an increase round followed by 2 plain rounds until you have done your last increase round. If you need a total number of stitches that is not a multiple of 8, so maybe you don't need 64 stitches, maybe you only need 60 stitches, then what you would do on your final round, instead of doing 8 increases, you would only do 4, and you would space them out so that you would do them at every other location. So you would still do one at the beginning of the round, but instead of doing one right here, right before the previous increase column, you would just keep knitting across, and then you wait until you get to this column. So you would just do every other time. So instead of 4 increases on every half round, you're only going to do 2 of them, one at the beginning and one at the middle. If for some reason you need to do 6 increases instead of 8, then just skip the last one of the round. You just need to make sure that you have everything evenly spaced and that you're not skipping your increases all in the same sequential place in your round. Rather than working 2 plain rounds after every single increase round, you vary the number of plain rounds. After the first increase round, you work 1 plain round. After the second increase round, you work 2 plain rounds. After the third, you work 3. After the fourth, you work 4, etc. And you can see how they're getting spaced further and further apart. So the result is that these 2 formulas produce sock toes that can be quite different in length. People have feet that are proportioned very differently. So there are going to be some feet where the short round toe works really well using that formula, and other people where the short or the long round toe is going to work really well using this formula. And then there are going to be some people who are somewhere in between and might need to customize the length of their toe. I've made a chart which I will link to down in the video description that compares the short round toe formula to the long round formula. So you can see what the total number of rows you will have worked after each increase round. And you will also see how many plain rounds you're supposed to work at each step. So you can use this as a way of helping you determine which toe you want based on the toe length of the person that you are knitting for. The average adult is going to need approximately a 2-inch toe, but that can really vary. Some people have very long toes, some people have very short toes, and some people just have toes that aren't in proportion with the circumference of their foot, and you might need to make an adjustment for that. This is my brother's foot, and this is my foot. So my feet are, I have a pretty average length toe, and my foot is actually slightly small in circumference. It doesn't look narrow, but the circumference is actually slightly smaller. My brother has a very large circumference foot. His toes are longer than mine, but they are pretty short relative to the way the rest of his foot is proportioned. So my brother's foot is slightly more than 11 inches in circumference, and so I typically make him a sock that's about 10 inches in circumference, so that has a little negative ease. If we use an example of a pretty standard sock gauge of 32 stitches and 44 rounds over 4 inches or 10 centimeters, that's 8 stitches and 11 rounds per inch. For a 10-inch sock at 8 stitches per inch, he needs 80 stitches for his sock. So let's look at a chart that compares how many rounds long the sock toe would be if he had a short round heel, or toe, this says heel, toe, short round toe versus a long round toe. So if we look at this chart here, when we get to the final increase round, the 9th increase round, in order to get to 80 stitches, a short round toe is going to have 26 rounds in length, but the long round toe is going to have 46. So that's a significant difference. So this is 26 and this is 46. That is 2.4 inches and this is about 4.2 inches. So this is clearly far too long of a toe for my brother. He has a toes that are about 2.5 inches long. So this would actually work really well for him. I could adjust it slightly if I wanted to, but this works really well for him. Now let's look at the same scenario. For me, I need a 7-inch sock. That means I need a sock that has 56 stitches. So let's look at how many rounds long the heel would be. The heel, I keep saying the heel, it's toe. How long the toe would be if it was a short round toe versus a long round toe. So if we look at this, have 17 rounds for the short toe and 22 rounds for the long toe. This is about 1.5 inches long and this is exactly 2 inches long. My toes, I need 2-inch toes. So this one is perfect for me. So for me, the long round toe is perfect, but for my brother, the short round toe is exactly what I need. Let's look back at my brother's foot again. What if instead of a 2.5-inch toes, maybe his toes were 3 inches? That might be more in line with someone who has feet as big as he has. So he would need a sock toe that was 33 rounds long. Let's look back at that chart again. So we have a choice of 26 or 46 if we use these formulas as they are. I could add some extra plain rounds in the short round toe in order to get up to 33. I need 7 more. So instead of 2 plain rounds here, I could have 3. So I'm going to keep adding 1 all the way up. So I can add my 7 rounds in by doing 3 plain rounds between each increase round, except for the first one. I would just do 2 after the first one, and then I could do 3 for the rest of them. If I wanted to be completely consistent, I could even do 3 after this one, and it's going to make the toe teeny. It's going to make it 34 rounds long, which is close enough. So it just depends on how precise you want to be versus how consistent and how to make it easier on yourself. In this case, I'd have to eliminate 13 rounds to make this work for my brother. It just doesn't work. But if I needed, say, 40 rounds or something like that instead for some reason, I could get rid of 6 rounds by going up here and just making each of these 1 round shorter as well. So you can make those adjustments to these standard formulas in order to get exactly the length of toe that you want to get. Links to the chart comparing the long and short round toes, as well as to other sock-related playlists and technique videos, can be found down in the video description. If you'd like to see how this toe is worked for a cuff down sock, you can click over here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.